Tropical Storm Bret continues to move north of the Bahamas. I'm Mike Naso from Internet Partnership Radio with the latest on the tropics. And as we head now into the latter part of July, we are getting closer and closer to when things will start to heat up in the Atlantic tropics. And indeed, it does appear as though we're going to see activity coming in the next several weeks, and we have activity out there right now. Here's the latest imagery from the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific satellite, and you can see we have two systems. We have Tropical Storm Bret here well north of the Bahamas. Now it was a lot closer. It clearly has made that move off towards the northeast, a somewhat unexpected tropical storm that developed in the last 24 hours, and it is anticipated to continue to move straight on off towards the northeast, and we're not going to have to deal with it. You can see down here in the Eastern Pacific, this blob is Tropical Storm Dora, which is destined to become a major hurricane as it parallels the coast of Mexico. We'll be talking about both of these features over the course of this video update. But we did want to get to Bret since it is in the Atlantic Basin. Here's the latest on Tropical Storm Bret. This was as of 11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Bret was at 28.7 north, 76.6 west. Winds were down to 60. It had been up at 65 miles per hour. And gusting to 70, is moving north-northeast at 6, 998 millibars. And it is forecast to continue that motion now off to the northeast and eventually even more of a bend east-northeast. And by the weekend, we'll be way out here in the North Atlantic. We're not going to have to deal with it anymore as Bret will move out. And definitely, as I mentioned, a somewhat unexpected tropical storm. A few of the models hinted, hey, maybe this piece of energy will come down to the south and start to brew north of the Bahamas, but really the models weren't latched onto it, but indeed, that's what occurred. Now, it was a lot closer to the Bahamas and the Abaco Islands earlier in the last, say, 12 to 24 hours ago, but it has made that move. It kind of executed a little loop here and moved on off towards the north-northeast. That is anticipated to become more northeast than east-northeast, but if it continued to move more north-northeast, then there might be some concern of some type of impact here in North Carolina. Right now, that doesn't appear to be the case, and you can see the wind field with Bret is rather small. But there were some tropical storm force winds that began to impinge on the Bahamas, and there was some concern that if it drifted south or south-southeast, it could actually get over the Bahamas and cause some problems there. Thankfully, that did not occur. Here's the latest model guidance on Bret, and you can see it continues to move the system. The National Hurricane Center does have that movement now, but it's almost towards the southern edge of the guidance now. The models have kind of shifted a little to the left. Obviously not like the BAM medium, which takes it all the way here south of Wilmington and areas of the North Carolina coast. However, some of them are a little bit more close to the coast, and the consensus here is a little bit closer than we thought before, but still on off towards the northeast to where we won't have to worry about it in Bermuda or in the United States, kind of finding that pathway right in between to where we won't have to deal with it. Now, Bret, looking on the water vapor, looks horrible at this hour. I'm very happy to report that. You can see an absolute intrusion of dry air unlike any tropical cyclone ever sees. And you can see the thunderstorm activity is completely diminished around the center. It's hard to believe that we even have a tropical depression, let alone a tropical storm, but indeed we do. And there is a circulation in there. You can't see it because the sun's not up for the visible images. Now here's the infrared, and you can see Bret continues to try and hold its own. It's a little bit more circular, but look at this convection. I mean, when you got blues and yellows, you've got problems, major problems, and Bret has problems this hour in trying to maintain any intensity it has. But it did pop out an eye-like feature earlier, and if it would have drifted more to the south and southeast, the waters do get warmer, and if the wind shear would have let up, we could have had further intensifications, but that didn't happen. You can see the wind shear is on the increase, especially from the north, and it's right on the edge actually of very, very favorable conditions to the south and very unfavorable conditions to the north. That's why be thankful that the ridging set up to where this is going to be able to find a way out rather than kind of get pushed south and then even back west, because then we'd quite possibly be dealing with a hurricane coming through the Florida Keys. If that had been the case. Of course, that's not the track Bret took. It's going to continue to head on off towards the northeast and probably even bend further to the east where we won't have to deal with it. Now, in contrast, when I show you our Eastern Pacific storm, note the very low wind shear here for Dora, which is going to cause it to intensify quite steadily over the next couple of days, and that's what we're going to have to deal with. Low wind shear over the Western Caribbean, but nothing there to be concerned about. Central Atlantic getting more and more favorable as we get closer to August, but the real key here is the sea surface temperatures. Look at this. Clearly, as I mentioned, Bret is now over cooler waters, and it's going to continue to be over cooler waters. But look what would have happened if it would have drifted further into the Bahamas. Look at these purples showing up on the map in the Bahamas and the Gulf. This is very foreboding for any future systems this year that may end up taking a track into the Gulf of Mexico or coming up out of the Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico. That is a concern, especially if you live in Florida and along the Gulf Coast. You never want to see waters that hot as we head towards the peak of hurricane season. And Dora will have some waters here along the south coast of Mexico to take advantage of, and that's another reason why intensification does look likely. Now out in the central Atlantic, we do have this tropical wave out here that the Canadian model was showing may try and do something down the road as it heads towards the Lesser Antilles in about 5 to 10 days. But right now I think the odds are is that it's still a little bit too early, but we've got about, say, 12 days, I'd guess, until about the 1st of August when things really will start to crank up, and I do think they will. I do think we're going to have a very active August. That's all the indicators are there that everything's going to set up just right to give us the August with a lot of activity. Now, elsewhere in the Atlantic, you can see we have a good wave here north of Puerto Rico, not showing anything though. There's Bret looking very, very skimpy. This, however, is Dora, which it started looking a little bit better earlier and is kind of still a little flat on the western side, but it does have deeper convection wrapping around the center, and it is expected to become a hurricane probably in the next 24 hours and continue a track like this. Here's the latest on Tropical Storm Dora as of 11 p.m. Eastern Time. It was at 11.1 north, 94.1 west. Winds were up to 55, actually 60 miles per hour. This map is incorrect. It's a little bit stronger than the map shows. Moving west at about 12 miles per hour, 13 miles per hour, and 997 millibars. And is far enough to the south that as it generally curves west-northwest, the ridging should be enough to keep it away from land. But look at here. Wednesday afternoon all the way into Thursday afternoon, Dora is expected to be a major hurricane, a Category 3 at this point. And if it were to take some deviation off to the north, on the north edge of this track, you would have a major hurricane not too far off from the Mexican coast, which is not good news. And you can see even the Baja here is in the cone 5 days out. So if you're heading into the Mexican coast, say for the weekend, keep an eye on Dora, because we're going to have a hurricane, a strong hurricane, a major hurricane, roaring itself just south of the coastline, barreling west-northwest underneath a ridge. And if some of the computer models indicate this ridge will break down, Dora could head more on the north edge of this track and cause some problems. And that is not something we want to see, as Dora will continue to move on off towards the west-northwest. Now we have another system in the western Pacific. This is Typhoon Mayan, and this has been a major system the last several days, destined to hit Japan, and it is about to make landfall. It's at 31.9 north, 132.9 east, winds still of 80, gusting to 95. It's a ragged Category 1 typhoon moving north at 13, anticipated that turn after landfall off to the east, and then even the east-southeast, and then eventually heading back northeast by the weekend. But it will be making landfall along the south coast of Japan, and indeed that's what it appears to be doing. Here's the latest satellite. The sun just came out there, and you can see obviously the eye of the cyclone is right about here, so it's just avoiding landfall, but it looks like it will either make landfall here on the peninsula or a little bit further to the east as it curves. Either way, the full fury of the typhoon is pushing itself into Japan with a lot of high waves, storm surge, and a lot of rainfall. Here's the radar, and you can see the typhoon continues that march right into the coast, and you can see the dry air that was affecting it that's probably kept it from being anything say upwards of 100 or 110 miles an hour as it continues to move, heading directly towards landfall. A lot of rainfall, a lot of impact with this typhoon along the Japanese shoreline. Well, that'll do it I'm Mike Naso from Internet Partnership Radio. Check out wxblog.com, weatherblog.com, our new forum, as well as podweather.com and IPR365.com. We'll be with you throughout hurricane season 11. Take care.